For thousands of years, humanity has dreamed of creating intelligence outside of itself. Today, these dreams are intensifying, and with them, our nightmares. Artificial intelligence is not simply a new technology. It is an accelerator of progress and power shifts. An accelerator that is gaining additional momentum through further technological breakthroughs, with consequences that we are only beginning to imagine. The desire to mechanize thinking is more than 2,000 years old. Already in myths, automata, and early philosophical traditions, we see attempts to frame mental processes as rule-based manipulations of symbols. This idea that thinking can be formally described forms the hidden genealogy of modern AI. Along this genealogy, 7 archetypal milestones can be identified. The golem, 4th century BCE, represents, in Jewish mysticism, the ancient dream of breathing life into a clay figure through rituals and sacred letters, and the fear of losing control over it. The classical golem executes commands but does not understand context. Many golem stories end with the creature taking instructions too literally and spiraling out of control. The steam-powered pigeon of Archytas, circa 350 BCE, demonstrates for the first time that the laws of nature can be technically replicated. The pigeon is considered one of the earliest proto-robots. It is said to have flown in a controlled manner for up to 200 meters. Talos, 7th to 3rd century BCE, is the colossal bronze guardian of Crete, a forged, mobile automaton that patrols the island, hurls boulders, and burns intruders. An early proto-robot, he illustrates how antiquity imagined artificially programmed agency, strong, mechanical, and tireless. The Talos narrative also shows how a runaway artificial being can be stopped, reflecting early Greek anxieties about overly powerful creations, a theme that echoes in today's AI debates. Al-Khwarizmi, Latinized as algorithmy, circa 820 CE, is the father of algebra and the originator of the concept of the algorithm, the idea that complex problems can be solved through clearly defined steps, the foundation of all modern AI. With Al-Khwarizmi, something fundamentally new begins, the idea of software. The homunculus, 16th century, literally little man, is the alchemical experiment of artificially creating a human being in the laboratory. Paracelsus describes a creature subordinate to its creator, raising questions about consciousness, control, and the boundary between nature and technology. The Mechanical Turk, 1770, made visible how readily we attribute intelligence to machines, even when they rely only on clever tricks. An early technological hoax, it convinced the world that machines could think. ELIZA, 1966, developed by Joseph Weizenbaum, demonstrated that even simple mirroring of questions can appear like understanding. It was one of the first software systems to suggest thinking, marking the beginning of modern human-machine interaction. The history of AI is not a linear curve of progress. It is a sequence of waves, visions, hopes, disappointments, and new beginnings. The roots of AI lie in cybernetics. At the Macy conferences, the idea emerged that machines might replicate biological information processing. Cybernetics connected worlds that had previously been separate: mechanical automata, mathematical logic, Shannon's information theory, and the first neural networks of McCulloch and Pitts. At the University of St. Gallen, too, it shaped generations of thinkers, from Hans Ulrich to Peter Gomez, Gilbert Probst, and Fredmund Malik. Then came Alan Turing. His test made intelligence observable. He shifted the question from, "Can machines think?" to, "When do they appear intelligent?" An intellectual breakthrough that still resonates today. In 1956, the Dartmouth Workshop marked the official birth of AI. McCarthy, Minsky, Shannon, and Rochester defined a new research field. Symbolic AI emerged, the idea that intelligence arises from rules and logic. Expert systems sought to pour human knowledge into software. Intelligent agents began modeling rational action in complex environments. But reality caught up with the vision. The AI winters of the 1970s and 1980s demonstrated how quickly grand promises can collapse under limitations in computing power, data scarcity, and methodological constraints. Entire research programs unraveled. And yet, from every winter, a new wave emerged. Deep learning, big data, and systems such as Deep Blue, Watson, and AlphaGo mark the transition to an AI that is no longer explicitly programmed but learns. An AI that recognizes patterns, leverages probabilities, and develops superhuman capabilities in narrow domains. Today, AI branches into language, perception, economics, and science. For the first time, serious researchers are no longer debating merely whether machines can outperform humans at specific tasks, but whether artificial general intelligence is conceivable at all. Systems capable of learning, reasoning, and acting across multiple domains. Once intelligence is conceived as a general, domain-spanning capability, the reference point shifts. If comparability with human intelligence is possible, superiority becomes conceivable as well. This hypothetical surpassing of human capability is referred to as superintelligence. This illustration captures the dream of Turing and von Neumann, the vision of a universal machine. What long remained theoretical now seems within reach. Computation and construction are converging. Machines no longer merely analyze, they design and optimize. Thinking becomes action. Calculation becomes creation. On the left, we see Wim Klein, the human calculator at CERN, as well as the NASA computers, individuals who once provided the computational capacity of entire institutions. On the right, the exponential development of transistors illustrates how technical computing power is increasingly reaching and potentially surpassing biological benchmarks. As early as 1999, Ray Kurzweil projected that by around 2035, $1,000 could purchase the computing power of a human brain, and by 2055, that of billions of human brains. For the first time, this raises the technical question of whether machine intelligence could exceed the overall performance capacity of humanity. This animation illustrates how exponential growth works. We begin in 1940 with just 30 cubic centimeters of water in Lake Michigan. Every 18 months, the volume doubles, similar to Moore's law. First 30, then twice 30, then 4 times 30 cubic centimeters. For decades, the lake appears practically empty. But by 2025, it is suddenly full, a metaphor for how long exponential growth remains invisible and how abruptly it becomes visible. This full lake roughly corresponds to the computing power of a human brain. Early AI approaches ranged from symbolic methods to expert systems. Knowledge was explicitly formulated, rules were encoded, and conclusions were derived logically. Intelligence was modeled structure. With the advent of big data, the focus shifted. In classical machine learning, humans decide what might be relevant. The model learns how relevant it is. Models are tools. One model for one task, built for a clearly defined purpose. As data volumes and computing power grew massively, deep learning emerged. Models began learning representations on their own, though still typically for individual tasks. A new stage began with so-called foundation models, systems pre-trained on vast datasets that uncover structures autonomously and can then be flexibly adapted to a wide range of tasks. Models thus become platforms, and that shift redefines the operational role of the human. Humans select models, combine them, adapt them, integrate them into processes, and evaluate the results, intervening when necessary. With foundation models, capabilities became consolidated. A single model integrates language understanding, analysis, and generation. AI agents take this a step further. They do not use these capabilities in isolation. Instead, they organize them into chains of action. They combine models and tools, plan intermediate steps, make decisions along the way, and independently execute multi-step tasks. AI, therefore, no longer just provides answers, it coordinates entire workflows. And wherever action is automated and scaled, new dynamics emerge, productive, yet not always fully predictable. AI and quantum computing are opening new horizons. Many scientific and industrial challenges, from atmospheric modeling to materials design, rely on complex equations and vast search spaces that overwhelm classical computers. This includes the development of new materials for CO2 capture in cement plants or waste incineration facilities. Such simulations are classically intractable, whereas a quantum computer could potentially handle them in a matter of days. AI identifies patterns. Quantum computing expands the solution space. Together, they enable entirely new solutions. The illustration highlights 3 key points. AI expands the range of problems that can be solved using classical methods. Quantum algorithms open up entirely new classes of problems. Together, these technologies make it possible to tackle complex challenges at a previously unattainable scale. The title captures the core message. AI and quantum computing concentrate both potential and risk. Moore's law was exponential for decades, but is increasingly reaching physical and economic limits. IBM is pursuing an exponential roadmap in quantum scaling as well. The number of physical qubits is projected to roughly double each year, though this does not automatically translate into a doubling of practically usable computing power. AI compute is also growing exponentially, driven by more powerful GPUs, massive parallelization, and global cloud infrastructure. The key factor is the combination. When multiple exponential developments interact, an even stronger scaling dynamic emerges, visible in the green line. The result is a concentration of technological capabilities whose long-term consequences remain difficult to predict. For that very reason, long-term extrapolations, such as those proposed by Ray Kurzweil, should be examined critically. Doesn't this, perhaps accompanied by an uneasy feeling, raise the question of what role humans will still play? Many years before the tournament, Grandmaster Jan-Hein Donner was asked how he would prepare for a match against a computer. His answer was simple: "I would bring a hammer." This mix of humor and helplessness captures quite precisely where we stand today. 700 applications for a single position, a 17% decline in entry-level jobs, and this even though young people are better educated than ever before. What used to be the entry point is now often already automated. AI takes over simple tasks before graduates are even given the chance to begin. A study from ETH Zurich shows that AI not only reduces jobs, in affected professions, it can also prevent new ones from emerging. Even legal contract reviews are increasingly being automated. Analyses by consulting firms suggest that traditional academic degrees are losing relevance in some AI-intensive job profiles. What does this mean for you and for the generations to come? You are entering a labor market that has already changed radically and will continue to do so. Is this the end of the road? Hope, as the saying goes, is the last to fade. This image represents a central insight into the interaction between humans and machines. In so-called centaur chess tournaments, teams consist of various combinations of humans and computers. What matters is not who the strongest human is, nor which machine has the most computing power. Experience shows something different. An average specialist, combined with a chess engine and a superior interaction model, can defeat experts paired with a chess engine and a weaker interaction model, and sometimes even outperform a chess supercomputer on its own. For a long time, the division of roles was clear: the human as captain, the machine as navigator with radar. Today, that logic is shifting. The machine optimizes routes, detects patterns, and generates recommendations. The human remains the one who sets the goals, provides oversight, and bears responsibility. And therein lies the hope, not in either or, but in a new form of synergy. This chart illustrates how the labor market is expected to shift structurally by 2030. In blue, we see where new jobs are being created. In purple, where tasks are being displaced, each shown as a share of current employment. The diamonds are key. They indicate the net effect for each occupation, whether a field is growing or shrinking overall. The pattern is clear. Growth occurs where analytical skills, technological understanding, and adaptability are in demand. What matters, therefore, is less the job title than the skill profile brought into a given field of work. If we apply this structural shift to the University of St. Gallen, the overall picture remains positive. Regardless of their field of study, HSG students have strong job prospects. What matters, however, is the direction in which one develops academically and professionally. The growing fields are clearly those where technology, data literacy, sustainability, and governance play a role, across business administration, economics, law, international affairs, and computer science alike. In other words, it is not about choosing the right major. It is about sharpening one's profile to understand, apply, and take responsibility for these topics. That is where long-term opportunities emerge. The visualization is structured as a four-quadrant matrix. The horizontal axis represents current core competence. The vertical axis represents the expected increase in importance by 2030. Quadrant 1 clusters skills that are already central and continue to grow, such as AI and big data, analytical thinking, and technological proficiency. Their position reflects the rise of data-driven value creation. Empathy also appears here as a complementary capability in collaborative and complex work environments. Quadrant 2 highlights emerging competencies such as cybersecurity, driven by increasing digital vulnerability. Quadrant 3 includes stable skills without significant growth. Quadrant 4 indicates a relative decline in priority, such as multilingualism, not without value, but increasingly substitutable through technology. Overall, the pattern reveals a structural shift toward technological judgment and adaptive learning capability. Let me illustrate with a concrete example from my business practice how I used Gen AI. I developed a business case for a new workspace concept in which work areas are acoustically separated by invisible sound barriers. For this, I used a Monte Carlo simulation model with conservative, realistic, and optimistic assumptions. The challenge lay less in the simulation itself than in the quality of the assumptions. Without Gen AI, and given limited time and resources, it is difficult to systematically incorporate expert assessments, market studies, or comparable benchmarks. Decisions then often rest on a narrow set of assumptions, mathematically precise, yet conceptually fragile. With Gen AI, that changed. It helps structure assumptions more broadly, generate alternative scenarios, and critically examine results. This does not replace expertise or create certainty, but it significantly increases the robustness of the decision-making foundation. The second example is of a personal nature. It concerned a retirement decision under considerable uncertainty, life expectancy, capital market developments, and future health, factors that cannot be predicted with precision. My advisor had prepared an extensive scenario paper. In the end, however, one central question remained. What level of retirement income would you like to receive? Despite detailed tables and projections, a significant part of the decision remained normative, that is, dependent on individual preferences and risk assessments. I therefore consulted ChatGPT as a second opinion, not to delegate the decision, but to systematically challenge my assumptions, surface trade-offs, and explore alternatives in a structured way. On this basis, I developed, together with ChatGPT, a decision matrix that transparently compares different scenarios and weightings. That is, the matrix we will now examine in the next step. Instead of relying on a single retirement income figure, 5 scenarios were evaluated using 12 criteria. What mattered was not the exact numerical value, but how each scenario affected different dimensions, such as flexibility in capital withdrawals, tax progression, or psychological security. AI did not provide an absolute truth. It provided structure. It made uncertainty comparable and the recommendation transparent. Because AI is not infallible and can hallucinate, I submitted the decision matrix to my advisor for review. His reaction was twofold. He found the recommendation methodologically sound, while noting with a smile that analyses like this used to be part of his core business. I then asked ChatGPT to incorporate my life expectancy into the matrix, taking into account family factors, current medication, and medical developments. This led to an unexpected insight. ChatGPT suggested having my medication reviewed by a physician, not as a diagnosis, but as an additional decision parameter. The AI did not make the decision. It made assumptions explicit, highlighted connections, and structured alternatives. The decision remained mine, but it was based on a more transparent and more thoroughly examined set of assumptions. If we bring together the history of AI, its current momentum, and the concrete use cases, a clear picture emerges. AI is neither a promise of salvation nor a machine of doom. It is a force that expands our possibilities and our risks into new dimensions. It fundamentally changes how we understand, simulate, and decide. And with that, it reshapes our responsibility. The key question, therefore, is not whether machines will become more intelligent, but whether we learn to use that intelligence more wisely. The answer lies in centaur logic. Humans set goals and assume responsibility, while AI expands analysis and simulation. Not human versus AI, but human with AI. Does centaur logic still hold beyond human intelligence? With technologies such as AI and potentially quantum computing, power shifts not only through intelligence, but through speed. Humans may increasingly no longer decide in each individual case, but they remain responsible for how decisions are made and where deliberate restraint is applied. And this is where the crucial question arises. Does centaur logic still hold when machines decide faster, deeper, and more comprehensively than we do? Or do we bear responsibility for decision architectures whose consequences we no longer fully understand? As a token of appreciation for the invitation, dear Don Camilo, I had you portrayed as a visual metaphor for today's theme. And the commission went to none other than Leonardo da Vinci. How would you title this painting? The Ono centaur, human and donkey, embodies centaur logic, human and responsible AI working together in service of the common good. Against mechanical power and ideological rigidity, robots and Pepone stand conscience, moderation, and compassion. The donkey is not a stubborn animal, but a symbol of supportive, cautionary intelligence, and yes, sometimes loud when danger approaches. In short, the human leads with heart and conscience, while technology serves by supporting, examining, and warning.
Oh, Lord! Pepone has hooked up with a tin can! I hope you still have an angel left for me!
Produktion X.